I am at the halfway point of Mistborn and I'm having a hard time. So let's talk about it. Before we jump into the video, I just wanted to let you know that I've actually created a Goodreads account. And so if you want to follow me on Goodreads and just get my status updates, my progress throughout Mistborn or any other book that I read, I'm going to be providing updates there as well. And obviously, my reviews at the end. I'm going to write out a full review there on Goodreads. So if you want to follow me, just go to this link here. And you can either add me as a friend or you can just add me as a follower. Either way works for me. Also, this video will contain full spoilers, so if you haven't read Mistborn yet, I recommend clicking off right now. I'll give you guys a few seconds to do that as well. I want to start off by talking about Vin. In the previous episode, I mentioned that Vin was quickly becoming my favorite character in the book. She's obviously the main protagonist, and she's kind of growing into her own as she learns how to use her elementic powers. And she's found this new group that she's joined, and they're all treating her really nicely. And so she's becoming less untrustworthy and she's starting to grow into her own. And I really wanted to see how that played out throughout the rest of the book. So I'm about halfway through the book now. And unfortunately, I got some bad news. I'm not feeling it anymore. Her character, there was this point in the book where Kelsier is teaching Vin how to use her elementic powers and how to push and pull and control emotions and yada yada. And he's teaching her all these things, and she's very new at it. It's like she's like a first year at Hogwarts, right? And then there's a point in the story where there's this time jump. There's like a 6 month, I think, or like multiple month time jump. All of a sudden, we're in a new city, and it starts off by her seeing a shadow in the distance or something like that. And so she starts chasing after the shadow, and she's pushing and pulling and moving like she's already super good at like learning how to use her steel and iron powers. So she's pushing and pulling and chasing this person, and all of a sudden they come into contact with each other, and it's Kelsier. And so it becomes clear that this is like a training session where she's having to chase him and keep up with him. And so they're pushing against each other, and they're at like a standstill where they're both of their forces are equal and they're pushing against each other. The problem is we've learned in the story previously that if you come to a push off with someone and that person is heavier than you, they're going to win because they're just going to push you. And since they're heavier than you, you're going to lose every time. Kelsier realizes that she's actually more powerful than him because her powers are stronger than his, so she's able to keep equal like push strength with him, even though she's a lighter person and she should have been pushed back. And so the story kind of hands us that on a silver platter, like she has superpowers above and beyond like Mistborn powers or whatever. I thought that was kind of thrown in our face, and I was really disappointed with the time jump because I wanted to actually see her growth over time. I mentioned in the previous episode that I was excited to see her grow into her powers and learn them and go through the whole process of kind of growing up and learning these powers. And it didn't happen. I wanted to see how that played out. There could be so much drama and action in her learning how to use her powers and coming into her own and growing into those powers. And they just washed it away with a time jump, which really kind of disappointed me. Now, she's still at the point where she doesn't know all of the metals yet. She's still learning all of the metals, but at least for the iron and steel pulling and pushing, they introduced it and then they just time jumped into where she was already pretty good at, almost great at it. I kind of almost related it to in Harry Potter when Harry is just suddenly like a really good seeker and he didn't need any training or practice at all. He's just naturally the best seeker in the world on day one. It's unrealistic and it kind of pulled me out of the story a little bit. I'm at the point of the story right now where Vin is she's learning how to be a noblewoman and learning how to. She's going to these balls and dancing with all of these noblemen and yada yada yada. She meets Lord Elend Venture, and when they meet, instantly I knew that they were going to have a love interest. I'm not at the point of the book yet where they have the love interest, so this is purely speculation on my part. But there, it's clear. Like Brandon Sanderson makes it so obvious that they're going to have a love interest that it's almost not even exciting to watch it grow because it's just thrown in your face. In episode one, I mentioned that I thought maybe Kelsier and Vin were going to have a love interest, but they've grown into more of like, I don't know, maybe a brother and sister kind of thing now, where he kind of looks after her and treats her like a little sister. Definitely, Lord Ellen Venture is going to be the love interest here. It's pretty clear the way like they met at the ball and instantly started flirting with each other and making these snarky remarks back and forth with each other, clearly flirting, right? And I do really like the snarkiness back and forth between them. I think it's a really good back and forth dialogue. I really enjoy that dialogue, but it's so blatantly obvious that it's turning into a love interest that that part is kind of not very exciting for me because I predict and I pretty much know that it's going to happen, unfortunately. Now, where that love interest goes from here is going to be, I think, pretty exciting to see because he is like the heir to like the highest, most powerful house in the region. And so it is going to be exciting to see like if that love interest does bloom, where it goes. Like this might give her a leg into all of the noble houses and give her a little bit more sway in this whole rebellion thing. So I'm really excited to see how that can play into it. But the love interest itself, I really am hoping that Brandon Sanderson doesn't dive like. I hope this part of it doesn't turn into like a romantasy because I think that would just be a bad move. Overall, this part of the story is really boring to me. I mentioned in my opening clip that I have problems, and it really comes down to I'm having a hard time getting through this part of the book. And the reason for that is that we're in the POV of Vin, and all she's really doing right now is going to these balls. She's gone to two balls so far, and at one of them, she didn't even dance. So she just sat at a table rejecting a bunch of men's proposals to dance and then talking to Ellen. She goes up into the attic and he's there reading and she kind of steals his spot and that's where they meet and the flirting kind of starts happening. So a big part of this so far is just her going to these balls, rejecting a bunch of men, asking her to dance, and then the next ball that she goes to, she finally learns how to dance, and so she's accepting these men's proposals to dance and then dancing with them and then sitting back at her table, and then another man comes up and asks her to dance and she accepts and then goes back and sits at her table, and then it's like I felt like in Skyrim, you know, when in Skyrim you meet a guard and you try to talk to the guard and he gives you the whole arrow to the knee story. And then you talk to the next guard and he's like, I took an arrow to the knee. And then the next guard is like, I took an arrow to the knee. It felt like that. It felt like just a bunch of NPCs coming up to her, asking her to dance. And she dances with them over and over and over. It's like she was stuck in a dance loop with NPCs. I didn't enjoy it at all. And meanwhile, I think the problem with this is that they hint at Kelsier out doing a bunch of cool shit. Like every time she's at a ball or she's doing training or doing some of this, Kelsier's gone. He's out doing cool stuff, raiding houses and like setting up all kinds of stuff, like out doing cool Mistborn shit. And she's stuck at these balls. I wish Sanderson would have done like a POV switch every once in a while to see like, okay, while Vin is at this ball doing this boring shit, dancing with these guys, let's switch over to Kelsier and see all the cool shit that he's doing, raiding the houses and doing all that. I would have liked that a lot more, but we don't get any of that. There's one time where Kelsier like sneaks out and he's doing all the cool shit, and Vin actually tries to follow him. And so when Vin follows him, we learn that the Mistborns have set up these like iron roads, I think they are. And so they set up a bunch of metal between the two cities so the Mistborns can travel much faster, pulling and pushing off of the metal instead of having to travel by horseback or something like that or by foot. And so they can get between the two cities much, much faster because these metal roads have been set up for them. And I found that to be really intriguing. And that's a cool, like, world building snippet that I really enjoyed. I'll get to the world building in a few because I'm honestly not really enjoying that either, but we'll get there. I honestly can't tell if it's me or Vin that's more annoyed with her having to sit at these boring ass balls all day while Kelsier is out doing cool shit. So Vin finally gets fed up with sitting around doing nothing, and she finally decides to follow Kelsier one night. And she follows him into Luthadel, and she finds out that he's going to try to break into one of the Lord Ruler's like shacks. He finds out that the Lord Ruler goes into this shack every so often on like a very specific cadence. I think it's like every 3 days for 3 hours or something like that. And so he's planning on breaking into this place to see what's in there. And we learn that he's tried to break into this place once before, and that's actually how he got imprisoned and had to go to the pits. He's trying to do it again, and Vin kind of catches him in the act because she followed him, and she convinces him to let her go with him. And he has no plan. It's explained in the book that the last time he attempted to raid this place, he spent months and months and months planning for it and setting up this specific plan, and then it all fell apart almost immediately. And so this time he's going in with no plan. And somehow Vin is able to convince him to let her go with him. That's the dumbest thing ever. They go and try to raid this building, and they immediately are interrupted by multiple Steel Inquisitors. They get into this big fight with the Steel Inquisitors. Vin gets an axe to the side by one of the Inquisitors, and so she has this massive gash on the side. Kelsier gets knocked unconscious, and Vin passes out. It's just a complete shit show. They should have never done it, type of thing. So Vin passes out, and then she gets rescued by someone who we don't know who it is. I think we later learn that the person that rescued her was Sazed. She gets rescued, and so she has to have some downtime to heal. She's constantly burning pewter. If she wasn't on pewter when she got hurt, she would have died. And so she has to kind of stay on pewter throughout her healing process in order to, in the beginning, in order to not to die, but then also like relieve the pain and make her have a little bit more energy while she's going through this healing process for God knows how long. They make it sound like it's like a couple months that she's healing. And so the whole time she's on pewter. And there was one point in the book where she insinuated that she was like trying to wean herself off pewter, almost like she was addicted to it. I know that it's supposed to make you stronger and yada yada, but in that moment it kind of sounded like she was addicted to opiates because she was like trying to wean herself off of it to get off of these painkillers. So it was kind of just weird how they explained it that way. And while they were going through this whole fight with the Steel Inquisitors, she grabbed like this big leatherback book because she was running out of her allomantic powers. Her metals were running out. And so she needed some protection. The Steel Inquisitors were like shooting shards of metal and stuff at her. And so she needed something to block these with. So she grabbed this big book and leatherback book, and she was blocking the shards of metal with this book. And they get out of there with the book. And it turns out that this book is written in the Lord Ruler's like native language. And so it's really intriguing to Sazed, and Sazed starts studying this book. So the most fun that I had and the most intriguing part of this part of the book, in my opinion, was that scene where they tried to infiltrate the Lord Ruler's palace. I thought it was really fun, action packed, and Vin was finally, even though they lost almost immediately, she was finally able to like get some action and use her powers and kind of feel how that process plays out. So I thought that part was fun, mixed in with a lot of like really boring politics and balls and shit. I also mentioned in the previous episode that I didn't really care about the crew very much, and I was hoping to learn more about the crew and get more involved with them and hopefully learn more about their backstory so I can start caring about them more. I still don't. I still don't care about them. The only one that I'm starting to get interested in is Sazed because he's really intriguing to me because he feels like a philosopher to me. He knows a lot about history and about the politics and about religion, a lot about religion. I think he knows like everything there is to know about religion, and he's always studying and he's really interested in that kind of stuff, and I am too. And so that makes me kind of build a connection with him. He still hasn't really done a lot other than provide Vin some guidance while she's going to these balls, and he's training her and those kinds of things. So I feel like Sazed and Vin are building a pretty good bond with each other. But I think Brandon Sanderson is doing a pretty terrible job, if I'm being honest, of building that bond with us. Like the two characters are bonding, but he's not portraying that bond to us through the book, in my opinion. I really hope that a lot more of that stuff starts happening. Either that or a lot more action, because this is really boring so far. The first quarter of the book, I would say when we were being introduced to the magic system and learning about the main characters and watching Vin go through her struggles as a ska and becoming powerful and growing into herself. I really love that part of the book. That was only like a quarter of the book, though, maybe. And everything else, probably less than a quarter, actually. I would say a quarter of what I've read so far, and I read half of the book so far. So less than a quarter of the book has been that. And then the rest has just been really boring political stuff. And I also want to clarify that I don't think it's boring because it's not chock full of action. I think it's boring because the dialogue that it contains is boring dialogue. There were points in the dialogue that didn't contain action that I did think were really intriguing. Like they had one meeting where the group got together and they were brainstorming ways that they could attack, that they could build the rebellion and attack the noble houses and finally get to the Lord Ruler, like get past the Inquisitors. And so they were all brainstorming and throwing ideas and spitballing. That scene was really intriguing to me. I thought it was really awesome. But then there's scenes like Vin sits at table, boy comes up and asks Vin to dance. Vin dances. Vin sits back at table. Next boy comes up to dance. Vin accepts and dances. It's like you don't need chapters upon chapters of that. You can do it once and we get the point. I hope we quickly move on from that because I'm starting to get tired of it. Also, stop explaining the magic system to me. I feel like I'm being so negative through this whole video. I don't need to be reminded every single time Vin uses her powers what the powers do. I've made multiple references to Skyrim, and I'm going to make another one because I feel like I'm stuck in a tutorial loop in Skyrim. It's like, press button B to do this, press B to do this, press A to do this, press left trigger to do this. And it's like, I know already, like you've explained this to me 30 times. Stop explaining it to me. I understand it already. You don't need to keep giving me the tutorial. Just stop. Stop telling me how it works. One other more minor disappointment that I have is the world building. So the problems that I have with the world building so far is there just hasn't been much. At the beginning of the book, we're introduced to the ash falling from the sky and the red sun and the mist. That's about it. Like there hasn't been much. We've traveled to one city so far. And if you look on the map at the beginning of the book, that one city is like right next to Luthadel. So it's like within walking distance almost, it feels like, or at least horseback. And so we haven't traveled around much. The one tidbit that they threw in was that the Mistborn have built these metal roads. And I talked about that previously. So I thought that part of the world building was pretty cool, that they've built these metal roads through connecting the cities so they could travel faster. But other than that, we haven't really learned much about the world yet. So I guess the biggest problem that I have so far is it seems like Kelsier is the main protagonist right now. And since we're not in the POV of Kelsier, we don't get to see all the cool stuff that's happening, all the raids and stuff that he's going on. And we're stuck seeing the boring stuff that's happening with Vin, the relationship building and the politics and that kind of thing, which is also fun, but I would like to see a little bit more of each. I would like to see both of those things go into more detail. We're seeing the stuff happening with Vin at the balls and in the meetings and learning her how to use her allomantic abilities, but we're not seeing it in the detail, the grimy, gritty detail that I would like to see it in. I want to see those little gritty details of her learning how to use her powers and growing and becoming a really powerful Mistborn. For this book to redeem itself for me, I think the second half of the book is going to have to either really start getting into the nitty gritty or have at least really awesome, cool action scenes. So far, the only thing that's over explained to me is the magic system itself. I need Brandon to stop telling me how the magic works and start telling me how Vin is actually learning the magic. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Mistborn in-depth review. I felt like I was a little bit more negative in this one, and I apologize for that, but I want to be honest with you guys about how I'm feeling about this book. I don't want to just say that I love it because everybody else on the internet loves it. I don't want to say that I love it because it has super high ratings on Goodreads. I want to give you my honest takes on how I'm actually feeling about Mistborn, and so far, this is how I'm feeling. I'm not loving it. I love the concept of what this book is trying to deliver to me. I love how the world is coming together so far. I love the magic. I really enjoy this magic system, and I hope there's a video game made out of it because this would be a perfect video game adaptation. The dots are just not connecting. There's not enough detail for me. Brandon is giving me all the pieces, all the correct pieces are there, but they're not put together well enough for me yet. That he needs to start explaining things in more detail. I need the nitty gritty. And so that's where I'm at with this now. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you liked the video, please give me a like. I would love to hear your comments down in the comments section. Am I on track? How did you guys feel about this book? I'm going to keep reading to the end. I want to see how this book finishes, but I would love to hear your guys' thoughts so far. Please don't forget to follow me on Goodreads here, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.